Why the poor stay poor, and how to break the cycle forever. Most people believe poverty is only about money. They think it's about income, circumstance, or luck. But the truth is deeper. Poverty begins in the mind long before it appears in the wallet. And it stays alive through habits, environments, beliefs, and patterns passed from one generation to another. The poor stay poor not because they are incapable, but because they were never shown the hidden systems, the mental frameworks, and the daily decisions that shape financial destiny. The rich were taught these rules. The poor were never given them. This audiobook exists to break that cycle. Welcome to Audiobook Sounds, Chasing Greatness, where we reveal the real reasons people stay stuck and the proven steps anyone can take to rise out of financial struggle for good. This is not motivation. This is transformation. By the end of this audiobook, you will see money, yourself, and your future differently. If you're ready to break the patterns that have held you back, if you're ready to rewrite your story, if you're ready to rise, then you're in the right place. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invisible Trap. How Poverty Begins in the Mind. Most people believe poverty starts with a lack of money. They think it begins with a low-paying job, an unfortunate childhood, or a lack of opportunities. But poverty does not begin in the wallet. It begins in the mind. Before it ever shows up in a person's bank account, it plants itself in their beliefs, their habits, their expectations, and even their sense of identity. Poverty starts as a thought long before it becomes a circumstance. It is shaped by quiet assumptions repeated for years, often without question. And the most dangerous thing about this mental trap is that it hides so well that people don't even notice when they are living inside it. The invisible trap that keeps millions stuck is not their income. It's a mindset shaped by fear, doubt, small expectations, and repeated patterns they never learn to break. It's a subconscious script people inherit from their environment, their family, and their experiences. And once that script takes root, it begins to dictate every decision they make. A person raised in a mindset of limitation does not need anyone to stop them. Their own thoughts will stop them long before the world does. People trapped in poverty thinking often carry beliefs like these. I'm not meant for more. That's just how life is. People like me don't get ahead. I'll just be grateful for whatever I can get. These beliefs sound harmless, even humble, but they are cages. They are invisible walls that shape a person's entire reality. A person who believes they cannot rise will never attempt to rise. Someone who believes success is for other people will never take the steps necessary to reach it. And someone who sees wealth as unreachable will never build the habits that create it. The mind accepts what it hears repeatedly. And once the mind accepts something as truth, it begins to protect it, even if that truth is destroying your life. This is why people stay stuck even when they earn more money. Their income increases, but their mindset stays the same. Their circumstances shift, but their beliefs do not. They get access to opportunity, but they retreat to familiar patterns because familiarity feels safe, even when it is harmful. Financial poverty can be escaped. Mental poverty cannot, unless you confront it. The poor stay poor because they were taught to survive, not to grow. They were taught to be grateful for what they have, instead of building toward what they want. They were taught to avoid risk instead of managing it. They were taught to fear failure instead of learning from it. They were taught to work hard physically, but never shown how to think strategically. This creates a powerful trap. A person can change their environment but still bring the same mental poverty with them. But the most damaging part of all is this. People who grow up around poverty often believe it is normal. They see struggle as the default state of life. They see chaos as routine. They see scarcity as something everyone must live with. And because it feels normal, they never question it. A mindset becomes a prison the moment it feels familiar. People trapped in poverty thinking often make decisions based on fear. They fear running out of money. They fear trying something new. They fear losing what little they have. And fear is a terrible guide. It pushes you toward urgency instead of strategy. It makes you reactive instead of intentional. It stops you from making long-term choices because you're too busy surviving the short term. This is why the poor spend differently. Not because they are irresponsible, but because their mind is trained to escape discomfort, not build for the future. If money brings temporary comfort, they take it. If spending relieves stress, they do it. If something brings a feeling of momentary escape, they buy it. Survival thinking always chases relief over progress. Meanwhile, the rich think decades ahead. Not because they are smarter, but because their mind is not trapped in daily panic. The psychological trap of poverty teaches people to believe that small actions don't matter. If they save a little money, it feels insignificant. If they invest a small amount, it feels useless. If they try to improve, it feels too slow. So they give up before momentum ever begins. This is how the trap strengthens itself. The mind tells them nothing will change, and then convinces them not to change anything. The rich, on the other hand, understand a powerful truth. Small steps done consistently create unstoppable results. The poor give up because progress feels slow. The rich grow because they trust the process. Another invisible barrier in poverty thinking is the belief that wealth happens to people, not through people. Many believe you need luck, connections, or a sudden breakthrough. Because they haven't seen wealth built step by step, they assume it must happen all at once. So they wait for something to happen, instead of becoming the person who makes things happen. The poor stay poor because they wait. The rich rise because they act. And here is the deepest part of this invisible trap. People in poverty often don't believe they deserve more. They are so used to struggle that they begin to identify with it. They confuse struggle with humility. They confuse lack with normalcy. They confuse being grateful with never aiming higher. A person who does not believe they deserve a better life will sabotage every opportunity that tries to give them one. This is why so many people push away success without realizing it. They feel uncomfortable when things improve. They panic when things go right. They self-destruct when they reach new levels. Their mind is still living in the old story. And that old story will keep repeating until someone rewrites it. Breaking the mental trap of poverty requires awareness. You must question every belief you inherited. You must examine every habit you repeat. You must challenge every limitation that was taught to you by people who never escaped the cycle themselves. To rise, you must reprogram your mind before you reprogram your money. You must learn to think long-term. You must learn to see opportunity where others see risk. You must learn to take small steps consistently. You must learn to detach your identity from your past. You must learn to say, I deserve a better life, and I am willing to build it. The truth is simple. Poverty begins when the mind gives up. Wealth begins when the mind wakes up. This chapter is not meant to blame you. It is meant to free you. You are not poor because of who you are. You are poor because of what you were taught, what you believed, and what you repeated. Once you illuminate the invisible trap, you can finally step out of it. This is where your transformation begins, not with money, but with a new belief about yourself. You are not stuck. You are not limited. You are not destined for the life you grew up in. The cycle ends the moment you decide to break it. Chapter 2: The Comfort Cycle. Why familiar struggle feels safer than growth. If poverty begins in the mind, it is sustained by one thing: comfort. Not comfort from abundance, but comfort from familiarity. People rarely stay poor because they enjoy struggle. They stay poor because struggle is familiar, predictable, and safe in a strange, hidden way. The human mind prefers the discomfort it understands over the opportunity it fears. And this is the core of the comfort cycle. Most people believe growth is limited by resources. In reality, growth is limited by comfort zones. The poor stay poor because deep inside, they have learned to adapt to discomfort instead of rising out of it. They know how to survive chaos. They know how to stretch little into enough. They know how to make it through the month even when everything feels heavy. Survival becomes a skill. And because they are skilled at surviving, they never learn to build. Familiar struggle becomes a home. A painful one, but a home nonetheless. And the mind will always return to what feels like home. The comfort cycle begins early. People grow up watching those around them settle for less, accept hardship, and normalize stress. They learn to expect struggle as a part of life. Bills piling up becomes normal. Debt becomes normal. Living paycheck to paycheck becomes normal. Getting excited for payday only to be broke again in 48 hours becomes normal. Stress becomes normal. Anxiety becomes normal. Everything painful becomes familiar, and everything unfamiliar becomes frightening. This is why many people fear success more than failure. Success requires new habits, new thinking, new responsibility, new discipline. Success demands a version of you that you've never met. Failure, on the other hand, is familiar. It asks nothing of you. It feels like home. Growth feels threatening because you are stepping into the unknown. Struggle feels safe because you know how to survive it. This explains why so many people repeat the same patterns year after year. They may not like their job, but they stay because it's familiar. They may want to save money, but spending feels easier because it's familiar. They may want to improve their life, but improvement feels uncomfortable because it disrupts old habits. The comfort cycle trains the brain to prefer short-term relief over long-term progress. A person trapped in this cycle will choose the smallest instant reward over the greatest future gain. They will spend money the moment they receive it because holding on to it feels unfamiliar. They will avoid financial planning because planning requires clarity, and clarity exposes discomfort. They will stay in environments that drain them because leaving feels intimidating. They will avoid hard conversations, new opportunities, or new skills because all of them require stepping beyond what they know. The comfort cycle creates a dangerous illusion. If nothing changes, nothing goes wrong. But this is a lie. When nothing changes, everything gets worse. Stagnation doesn't preserve your life. It suffocates it slowly. You see this cycle in people who say, "I'll start saving when I earn more." But when more comes, they still don't save. You see it in those who say, "I'll invest when life gets easier." But life never gets easier because they stay in the same patterns. You see it in people who say, "I'll change tomorrow." But tomorrow never arrives because comfort steals every opportunity to grow. The comfort cycle is powerful because it disguises itself as stability. But in truth, it is the enemy of progress. It is not lack of ability that holds people back. It is the fear of unfamiliar success. The poor stay poor not because they lack intelligence, but because they stay loyal to habits that feel safe. They cling to predictable routines even when those routines are destroying their future. They fear stepping into something new because newness carries risk, and risk feels like danger. Their brain associates change with fear, discomfort, unfamiliarity, and the potential for embarrassment or failure. But here's the truth. Staying the same carries the greatest risk of all. Every dream you postpone dries up. Every opportunity you avoid fades away. Every habit you refuse to break becomes stronger. Every year you wait becomes harder to overcome. The comfort cycle convinces you that you have time. But time is the one thing you don't control. Breaking this cycle requires a painful but freeing realization. The life you want exists outside your comfort zone, and it always will. You cannot access wealth with the mindset that created poverty. You cannot build success while clinging to the familiar patterns of struggle. You cannot step into a new level while refusing to leave the old one. Growth will feel uncomfortable. Discipline will feel unfamiliar. Saving money will feel strange. Learning new skills will feel challenging. Letting go of old patterns will feel scary. Saying no to familiar temptations will feel painful. But the discomfort of growth is temporary, and the reward lasts for the rest of your life. The poor stay poor because they choose the pain they know over the progress they fear. They choose comfort today over freedom tomorrow. They choose what feels safe instead of what would make them strong. To escape this cycle, you must begin choosing discomfort with intention. Not chaos, but disciplined discomfort. The discomfort of budgeting. The discomfort of saying no. The discomfort of standing alone when others stay stuck. The discomfort of investing. The discomfort of learning. The discomfort of patience. Your new life will cost your old habits. That is the price of breaking the cycle. You must become comfortable being uncomfortable. You must practice choosing growth even when your mind begs to retreat. You must train yourself to sit with the unfamiliar until it becomes your new normal. You must choose the unknown path, because the known path leads nowhere. The comfort cycle ends the moment you decide that familiar struggle is no longer acceptable. When you decide that your future is more important than your patterns. When you choose to step toward the life you want instead of staying loyal to the life you've been repeating. This is how cycles break. This is how new stories begin. This is how you rise. Chapter 3. The moment you get paid is the most powerful moment of the month. The moment money enters your account, you stand at a crossroads. Nothing reveals a person's discipline, mindset, or future potential more clearly than what they do in the first few minutes after getting paid. Most people don't realize this. They think payday is about relief, about catching up, about spending what they've been waiting to buy. But the truth is deeper. Payday is a test, a mirror, a loud truth teller. When money hits the account of the average person, emotion takes the lead. Excitement, stress, impulse, exhaustion, all of it blends together and pushes them into actions that do nothing for their future. They rush into spending. They justify unnecessary purchases. They chase comfort after a long month. And then the cycle restarts. Broke, stressed, waiting for the next paycheck to rescue them. But the 1%, they move differently. They understand something the world never taught most people. How you behave in the first 5 minutes after getting paid determines the next 30 years of your life. The wealthy don't wait to feel ready. They don't wait until they earn more. They don't wait until life calms down. They act immediately. They act intentionally. They act with purpose. This is the moment that separates those who repeat their year from those who transform their future. When the 1% receives money, their first thought is not, "What can I buy?" Their first thought is, "How do I protect my future before anything else touches this money?" This shift in perspective changes everything. Because for them, money is not a reward, it's a tool. A tool that builds stability. A tool that creates freedom. A tool that grows roots long before fruits appear. The wealthy do something most people have never been taught. They pay their future self before they pay anyone else. Before bills, before subscriptions, before food, before spending, even before debt, they secure a portion for their future. This is not selfishness. This is not greed. This is self-respect. Your future self has needs. Your future self has goals. Your future self deserves protection. But most people rob their future to feed their present emotions. The 1% understands that control over money is psychological long before it is practical. They know that if you do not decide where your money goes, your impulses will. So they take the strongest action they can. They automate their first move. No debate. No hesitation. No temptation. The decision is made before payday even arrives. This one habit, this first move, becomes the foundation of financial power. Because once the first move is controlled, the rest of the month becomes easier, calmer, more stable. But emotional spending? That happens because there is no plan. There is no intention. There is no structure guiding the money. Most people don't overspend because they're irresponsible. They overspend because they're unprepared. They overspend because payday feels like freedom, and freedom without direction becomes chaos. But the 1% doesn't seek relief, they seek results. Payday for them is not a release, it's a responsibility. And here's the truth everyone must understand. You don't rise financially by what you earn. You rise by what you do in the first moments after earning it. Think about how different life becomes when your first move is strength instead of impulse. Instead of rushing to spend, you create a barrier of discipline. Instead of running from bills, you organize them with clarity. Instead of fearing emergencies, you prepare for them in advance. Instead of drowning in obligations, you gain control over them. The moment money arrives, your habits speak louder than your income. Some people with high salaries stay broke because they lose this moment every time. Some with modest income grow wealthy because they win this moment consistently. This moment, payday, teaches you whether you are leading your money or your emotions are leading you. If emotions lead you, you will spend to feel better. If intention leads you, you will build to live better. And that is the difference between repeating your financial mistakes and rewriting your financial future. There is something powerful that happens when you take control of that first moment. Your identity begins to shift. You stop feeling like someone who is always catching up. You stop feeling like someone who is always behind. You stop feeling powerless. You begin to see yourself as the architect of your life. You begin to trust your decisions. You begin to walk with calm confidence. And confidence is one of the greatest forms of wealth. As this mindset grows, you begin to act differently throughout the month. You pause before spending. You evaluate every purchase. You ask stronger questions. Does this bring me closer to stability or pull me away from it? Am I buying this from discipline or from emotion? Is this an investment in my life or a distraction from my progress? The 1% understands that wealth is not built through big decisions. It is built through the first decision every payday. One disciplined move repeated dozens of times becomes a lifetime advantage. The middle class builds wealth only when they feel strong. The wealthy build wealth especially when they feel weak. Because they know this truth. Your money does not create your habits. Your habits create your money. So ask yourself, what do you do in the first moments when money enters your hands? Do you move with intention, or does your past take over? Do you protect your future, or do you sacrifice it for temporary feelings? Every month, you are given a chance to rise. Every payday, you stand before a door that leads to a different life. But only you can walk through it. Build the habit now, not later. Lead your money. Protect your future. Define your life with purpose. Because the moment you get paid will determine the life you build next. Chapter 4. The Hidden Cost of Low Expectations. There is a silent force that shapes the direction of a person's life more than education, more than opportunity, even more than talent. That force is expectation. What you expect from yourself, what you expect from your future, what you expect from your abilities, these expectations quietly sculpt the limits of your life long before you take your first step toward success. People often assume suffering comes from lack of money, lack of support, or lack of opportunity. But one of the most damaging forms of poverty is the poverty of expectation. This is the invisible ceiling people place above their own potential without even realizing it. A ceiling built not by society, but by the beliefs they absorbed from childhood, from their environment, and from the people around them. Low expectations do not show up loudly. They don't scream or announce themselves. They whisper. They blend in. They feel normal. They sound like phrases such as, "This is good enough," "I shouldn't aim too high," "People like me don't get ahead," "I just need to survive." These phrases shape a person's life silently, and because they seem harmless, people never question them. But low expectations have a cost, a heavy cost. They cost people their potential. They cost people their opportunities. They cost people their dreams before those dreams even have a chance to exist. When a person expects little from life, they make little effort to improve it. Why would they push beyond their comfort zone if they believe nothing better is possible? Why would they learn new skills if they assume those skills won't lead anywhere? Why would they save or invest if they think wealth is something they will never experience? The poor stay poor not solely because of circumstances, but because low expectations silently guide their decisions. A person with low expectations settles for the first job that comes, even if it offers no growth. They remain in draining environments because they expect nothing better. They avoid challenges because they don't expect to succeed. They stop learning because they don't expect their future to reward their effort. Low expectations kill potential long before life even has a chance. On the other hand, wealthy people, not just financially wealthy, but mentally wealthy, expect growth. They expect improvement. They expect progress. They expect rewards for effort. They do not assume life is fixed. They assume life is flexible. They assume they can change, adapt, learn, and rise. And because they expect more, they naturally do more. Expectation becomes a compass. If someone expects to lose, their mind prepares them for losing. If someone expects to stay poor, they notice only opportunities that lead nowhere. If someone expects to fail, they quit early. If someone expects disappointment, they sabotage success before it even begins. But if someone expects growth, their decisions align with growth. If someone expects to win, they play differently. If someone expects abundance, they make choices that naturally pull them toward abundance. This is the power of expectation. It is a predictor of action. And action predicts outcome. The hidden cost of low expectations is also emotional. When you expect little, you begin to see yourself as unimportant. You begin to shrink, to dim your ambitions, to step back from opportunities that were meant for you. You begin living a smaller life because you believe a bigger one is not meant for you. Your mind becomes your own cage. The bars are built from beliefs like, I can't, I'm not capable, I'm not smart enough, I'm too late, I'm stuck, nothing will change. These thoughts are not harmless. They become self-fulfilling prophecies. A person who believes they can achieve, tries. A person who believes they cannot, gives up before they start. And life does not reward those who stop trying. But something powerful happens when someone raises their expectations. When a person finally decides that they deserve more than survival, more than struggle, more than the same repeating cycle, life responds. Their mind shifts first, and then their decisions shift. They stop seeking comfort and start seeking challenge. They stop settling for the familiar and start reaching for the possible. A person who raises their expectations becomes more aware of opportunities. They begin recognizing the paths they once ignored. They start meeting people who match their new level of ambition. They start saying yes to what aligns with their future and no to what keeps them stuck. High expectations don't make life easier, they make you stronger. They force you to grow, to adapt, to stretch your limits. They push you out of the mental prison built by fear and conditioning. Some people think having high expectations sets you up for disappointment. But the truth is the opposite. Low expectations guarantee disappointment, because they guarantee stagnation. High expectations pull you into action, and action pulls you into progress. Even when you fall short, you grow. And that growth compounds. The rich build their lives on that compounding. Every improvement makes the next improvement easier. Every skill learned opens the door to another skill. Every confidence gained opens the door to another level. This chain reaction begins the moment you stop accepting less than what you are capable of. There is something else that keeps poor communities stuck in low expectations: environment. When everyone around you dreams small, plays small, and expects small, it becomes normal. Struggling becomes normal. Surviving becomes normal. Generational limitation becomes normal. But normal is not destiny. The person can break the cycle the moment they raise their expectations beyond their environment. When you expect more, your mind begins searching for ways to achieve more. You start thinking differently, acting differently, speaking differently. You carry yourself differently. Others may not understand, but they don't need to. Your expectations are about your future, not their understanding. Low expectations feel safe, but they kill possibility. High expectations feel risky, but they awaken potential. And here is the truth the rich understand deeply. You will never rise higher than the level of your expectations. Not your income, not your talent, not your job title, your expectations. If you expect small, you will build small. If you expect average, you will live average. But if you expect excellence, even before your circumstances reflect it, you will grow into it. The cycle of poverty begins to break the moment you raise your expectations and refuse to shrink back down again. The moment you stop thinking about what life gave you and start thinking about what you can create. The moment you stop waiting for permission and start moving intentionally toward a better future. You do not break the cycle by earning more. You break the cycle by expecting more. When expectations rise, everything else follows. This is the secret the wealthy learn early, and the poor are rarely taught. But now you know. And because you know, you can grow. If you are ready to continue, we move into the next truth, the deeper layer. Chapter 5, Emotional Spending. How Feelings Destroy Financial Stability. Most people believe they have a money problem, but what they truly have is an emotional management problem. Money does not disappear because of numbers. It disappears because of feelings. Emotional spending is one of the most powerful forces keeping people in poverty, and the tragedy is that most never realize it is happening. They think their financial struggles are caused by low income or bad luck, when in reality the root lies in how they respond to stress, pain, boredom, insecurity, and pressure. Emotional spending often begins quietly. A person feels overwhelmed from work and convinces themselves they deserve a treat. Another feels lonely and uses shopping to distract from the emptiness. Someone else feels stressed about bills and spends impulsively to feel momentary relief. In the moment, these purchases feel harmless, even necessary. They offer a burst of pleasure, a temporary escape, a feeling of control, but that feeling fades quickly. And when the feeling fades, the consequences remain. This cycle traps millions into repeating the same behavior month after month. Every payday becomes an emotional event rather than a strategic one. Instead of asking, "What will move my life forward?" people ask, "What will make me feel good right now?" And feelings, when unmanaged, always choose the path of comfort, not the path of growth. Emotional spending does not care about your future. It cares only about your immediate state of mind. And this is why it destroys stability so efficiently. People underestimate how much emotion influences their purchases. They think they are choosing logically, but most financial choices are driven by stress, insecurity, or a desire to escape. When someone feels powerless in their life, they buy things to feel a moment of power. When someone feels unseen, they buy things to feel noticed. When someone feels unsuccessful, they buy things to look successful. Money becomes a tool for emotional relief instead of a tool for building security. The poor stay poor because emotional spending keeps them trapped in survival mode. Every time life becomes difficult, they spend to cope, which drains their resources and creates more difficulty. And when difficulty increases, their desire to cope intensifies. It is a loop with no exit unless someone becomes aware of it. The wealthy understand something the average person never learns. Money is emotional, but you cannot let your emotions manage it. The rich feel stressed. They feel fear, pressure, frustration, and exhaustion just like everyone else. But the difference is this: they refuse to let their feelings make their financial decisions. They learned early that discipline creates stability, and stability creates peace. They do not seek peace in purchases. They seek peace in progress. The truth is this: emotional spending is not about money at all. It is about what you are trying to avoid feeling. Most people spend to escape something, and until they understand what that something is, they will repeat the pattern forever. Emotional spending is a form of self-soothing. It is comfort disguised as choice. It is impulse disguised as reward. It is pain disguised as pleasure. But every escape has a cost. The cost is the savings that never grow. The cost is the investments that never start. The cost is the debt that never disappears. The cost is the future that never changes. And the most dangerous cost of all, the identity that forms around the belief that you will always struggle. Emotional spending creates shame. A person feels guilty after impulsive purchases, but instead of addressing the guilt, they buy more to numb it. This guilt weakens self-trust. And self-trust is one of the most important forms of wealth a person can build. When you do not trust yourself with money, you stop planning. You stop trying. You stop believing you can change. The poor stay poor because emotional spending destroys their ability to trust their own discipline. But here is the truth most people never hear. Emotional spending is not proof of weakness. It is proof of unmet emotional needs. When people feel disconnected, unsupported, overwhelmed, or unfulfilled, their spending behaviors reflect it. The solution is not to feel ashamed. The solution is to understand what your emotions are trying to tell you. Each impulse to spend carries a message. The message might be, I am lonely. It might be, I am stressed. It might be, I feel trapped. It might be, I want comfort because life feels heavy. Once you understand the message, you can choose a response instead of reacting automatically. The rich respond. The poor react. Responding creates power. Reacting creates regret. You break the cycle of emotional spending by slowing down the moment before the purchase. That moment is your point of power. That is where the cycle either continues or ends. If the purchase is to escape an emotion, pause, breathe, acknowledge the feeling, and choose differently. If the purchase aligns with your future and not your feelings, proceed. This awareness alone is transformative. Once a person becomes conscious of their emotional triggers, they begin to take control of their life. They stop using money as a form of temporary medication. They learn healthier ways to cope, through planning, reflection, discipline, and vision. They begin to understand that real relief does not come from buying more. It comes from building more, building stability, building clarity, building a life that no longer requires escape. Emotional spending fades when a person starts healing the emotions that caused it. This chapter is not about judging the poor. It is about exposing the silent habits that keep them stuck. And emotional spending is one of the strongest chains holding people in financial struggle. If you want to change your financial life, you must first change the relationship between your emotions and your money. You must become the master of your choices instead of the servant of your impulses. You must learn to feel deeply without spending blindly. And when you do, your entire financial reality will begin to shift. Your emotional strength will become your financial strength. Your self-control will become your wealth. Your awareness will become your freedom. This is how you rise. Internally first, externally second. Now that you understand the emotional trap, we move deeper into the environment that shapes it. If you're ready, we continue to the next chapter. Chapter 6, Environmental Poverty. How your circle predicts your future. Full chapter completion. One of the most overlooked forces shaping a person's financial destiny is the environment they live in. Not just the physical environment, but the emotional environment, the mental environment, and the social environment. A person's circle, the people they talk to, listen to, and depend on, quietly influences every decision they make, including how they think about money, work, discipline, and the future. People rarely realize how deeply their environment programs them. It dictates what they believe is normal, what they believe is possible, and what they believe they deserve. It shapes their habits. It molds their expectations. It can either elevate them to new levels or trap them in old cycles. Environmental poverty is real, and it destroys more potential than financial poverty ever could. Look at any community, any workplace, any family system, and you will find a clear pattern. People tend to rise or fall to the level of their environment. If you grow up around people who complain constantly, you learn to complain. If you grow up around people who never save, you learn to never save. If you grow up around people who fear risk, you learn to fear opportunity. If you grow up around people who survive but never grow, you learn to expect the same. The environment becomes a script, and most people spend their lives reading from it without realizing they can write a new one. The poor stay poor partly because they live in environments that reward survival, not growth. These environments normalize struggle, normalize chaos, normalize spending without planning, normalize avoiding responsibility, normalize excuses, and normalize thinking small. When everyone around you is living the same way, it starts to feel like that's just how life is. But that belief is the very thing that keeps people stuck. A person becomes the average of the 5 people they spend the most time with, not because of magic, but because of exposure. You absorb the attitudes, standards, fears, habits, and beliefs of the people around you. You adopt their language, their reactions, their dreams, and even their limitations. You take on their expectations and call them your own. It happens slowly, silently over years. If your circle constantly talks about bills, stress, and survival, you will absorb that mindset. If your circle constantly complains, blames, and waits for luck, you will adopt that behavior. If your circle laughs at ambition, fears change, and avoids discipline, you will internalize that thinking. And before long, your life begins to mirror theirs. Environmental poverty is powerful because it hides in plain sight. People don't question it because it feels normal. But normal is not the same as healthy, and normal is not the same as right. Many people stay poor because their environment never exposes them to another reality. They don't see what discipline looks like. They don't hear conversations about investing or building wealth. They don't witness people setting goals and achieving them. They don't meet people who challenge their comfort zone. They're surrounded by people who reinforce the life they're trying to escape. The wealthy, on the other hand, protect their environment with fierce intentionality. They carefully choose the people they learn from, the voices they listen to, the books they read, the mentors they follow, and the energy they allow into their space. They know that environment determines elevation. They know that staying around people who think small will eventually shrink their dreams. This is why the rich surround themselves with people who think bigger, act smarter, and expect more. They understand that proximity is power. You rise when you are exposed to people who rise. You learn when you are exposed to people who learn. You grow when you are exposed to people who grow. You elevate when you are exposed to people who refuse to stay where they started. The difference between a poor environment and a wealthy one is not money, it is mindset. In a poor environment, people talk about surviving the month. In a wealthy environment, people talk about building the next 5 years. In a poor environment, people talk about stress, drama, and excuses. In a wealthy environment, people talk about strategy, improvement, and discipline. In a poor environment, people value comfort. In a wealthy environment, people value challenge. In a poor environment, people gossip about others. In a wealthy environment, people study others. This is why changing your environment is one of the fastest ways to change your life. When you surround yourself with people who think differently, you begin to think differently. When you surround yourself with people who are disciplined, your discipline grows. When you surround yourself with people who expect excellence, your standards rise. Exposure creates expansion. Chapter 7. The Debt Trap. Why borrowing feels like relief but leads to chains. Debt is one of the most subtle, seductive, and destructive forces keeping people trapped in financial struggle. It doesn't always look dangerous. It doesn't always feel threatening. In fact, in the beginning, debt often feels like relief. It feels like breathing room. It feels like a solution. It feels like a shortcut to comfort when life feels overwhelming. And that is exactly why it becomes a trap. The truth is simple. Most people don't fall into debt because they are reckless. They fall into debt because they are human, because they feel stressed, because they feel behind, because they feel pressure to survive, to belong, or to keep up. Borrowing offers an instant fix for emotional discomfort, and the brain loves instant relief more than long-term responsibility. Debt whispers promises that feel comforting in the moment. You can pay it later. You deserve this now. You'll figure it out eventually. It's not that much. Everyone does it. These thoughts feel harmless. They feel rational. But over time they become chains. Chains that tighten month after month until a person feels trapped inside their own life. Debt is dangerous not only because of the money it takes, but because of the control it steals. It steals freedom. It steals peace. It steals opportunity. It steals your ability to make choices based on your future instead of your fear. Most people don't realize how deeply debt affects their identity. The poor stay poor for many reasons, but one of the biggest is this. They use debt to cope with problems instead of using discipline to solve them. Debt becomes the emotional band-aid placed over the wound of financial instability. But band-aids don't heal wounds, they only cover them. Borrowing gives temporary comfort while creating long-term consequences. A person might borrow to feel secure for a moment, but that moment becomes the beginning of years of struggle. Every dollar borrowed must be paid back with more dollars. Every swipe of a card becomes a future sacrifice. Every loan becomes a monthly obligation that steals from your future self. Debt pulls money from tomorrow to pay for today, and tomorrow always arrives. This is why debt is a trap. It delays the pain until it grows too large to ignore. The world has normalized debt so deeply that people no longer recognize it as a threat. Credit cards are seen as lifelines. Loans are seen as progress. Buy now, pay later is seen as convenience. But every one of these creates the illusion of affordability while quietly eroding control. Money borrowed is money owned, but money owned is freedom lost. The dangerous thing about debt is that it creates the illusion of wealth. It lets people access things they have not earned yet. It allows people to feel successful without actually building success. It gives the appearance of progress while hiding the reality of future burden. Many people who appear to be living comfortably are drowning in silent debt that eats away at their financial stability every month. Borrowing to appear stable is the first step toward long-term instability. The wealthy understand this. They do not avoid debt because they fear it. They avoid it because they understand its cost. They understand that every loan limits their freedom. Every payment steals from their ability to invest. Every interest charge punishes their future. They know that discipline creates freedom and debt destroys it. The rich use debt strategically only when it multiplies their money. The poor use debt emotionally when it temporarily relieves their pain. That difference alone creates two very different lives. When a person relies on debt, they stop relying on themselves. They stop building discipline. They stop facing their reality. They stop looking for better solutions. They stop planning. They stop improving. Debt becomes the crutch that keeps them from learning how to walk with strength. Debt weakens financial character. It teaches avoidance instead of responsibility. It teaches impulse instead of patience. It teaches comfort instead of discipline. It teaches shortcuts instead of strategy. The worst part is that debt becomes a cycle. Once a person starts borrowing, their expenses increase. Their stress increases. Their desire for escape increases. And the temptation to borrow again grows stronger. They borrow to survive. Then they borrow to fix what borrowing created. Then they borrow again to manage the stress of being in too much debt. Debt becomes both the cause of the problem and the attempted solution, a loop with no exit. But here is the truth most people do not hear. Debt does not trap you, your habits do. Debt does not define you, your choices do. Debt does not control you, your awareness does. A person can break free from debt the moment they decide to stop using it as an emotional escape. The cycle of debt ends when you stop seeking comfort and start seeking clarity. When you stop running from the truth and start facing it. When you stop using money you don't have and start managing the money you do have. You break the debt cycle through honesty and discipline. Honesty about how much you owe. Honesty about how you got there. Honesty about the habits that must change. Honesty about what you can and cannot afford. It is painful, but the pain is temporary. Debt is comfortable, but the consequences last forever. Escape begins with a decision. No more borrowing for comfort. No more borrowing to impress. No more borrowing to escape stress. No more borrowing to pretend life is easier than it is. Debt loses its power when you take responsibility for your future. When you begin to build savings so emergencies do not push you into more borrowing. When you create a budget that aligns with your goals. When you learn to delay gratification. When you choose discipline over impulse. Every payment toward debt is a payment toward freedom, if you do not return to the habits that created it. And as the burden decreases, your confidence increases. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to feel in control again. You begin to experience the peace that only comes from responsibility and structure. Debt is a trap, but every trap has an exit when you stop escaping your emotions and start confronting your decisions. This chapter is not meant to shame you. It is meant to free you. It is meant to help you see the chains so you can break them. You are not your mistakes. You are not your past. You are not the debt you carry. You are the person capable of rising above it with awareness, discipline, and intentional action. Now that you understand the emotional and environmental traps, we go deeper into the psychological ones. If you're ready, we continue with the next truth. Chapter 8, Scarcity Thinking. Why the poor fear risk and the rich fear regret. Scarcity thinking is one of the most powerful forces holding people in poverty, and yet most never recognize it for what it is. Scarcity is not just the absence of money. It is the belief that resources are limited, opportunities are rare, and every decision must be made with fear. Scarcity is a mindset built on survival, and survival thinking destroys the ability to grow. Scarcity thinking shows up long before the money ever disappears. It appears in the hesitation to try something new. It appears in the fear of making mistakes. It appears in the belief that taking risks is dangerous. It appears in the constant worry that things will go wrong. Scarcity thinking convinces people that playing small is safer, when in reality playing small is the very thing that guarantees struggle. The poor stay poor because scarcity becomes their default state of mind. They fear losing what little they have more than they desire to gain what they do not yet have. They choose comfort over change. They choose predictability over progress. They choose safety over opportunity. And in doing so, they build a life where they protect very little while losing very much. Scarcity thinking is rooted in one powerful emotion: fear. Fear of failure. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of stepping into the unknown. Fear of losing what feels familiar. Fear becomes a cage disguised as caution. The tragedy is that scarcity feels natural to people who grew up in environments of lack. It feels responsible. It feels practical. It feels safe. But safety built on fear is an illusion. People cling to their limited resources, terrified to invest, terrified to grow, terrified to try again, and this fear keeps them in the same financial place year after year. Scarcity thinking creates a life where survival is the goal, not success. People with a scarcity mindset look at opportunities and immediately think, what if it goes wrong? People with a wealthy mindset look at those same opportunities and think, what if it changes my life? The difference between both lives is not intelligence. It is belief. The poor fear risk. The rich fear regret. Scarcity thinking makes people cling to the present. Abundance thinking makes people plan for the future. Scarcity tells you to hold tight to what you have. Abundance tells you to build something greater. Scarcity says be careful. Abundance says be intentional. Risk is the language of growth, but scarcity thinking translates risk into danger. Because of this, scarcity-trained minds avoid anything that requires stepping outside their comfort zone. They avoid starting businesses, fearing they might fail. They avoid investing, fearing they might lose money. They avoid learning new skills, fearing they might not be good at them. They avoid leaving their environment because familiarity feels like security. But security built on stagnation is not security, it is slow decline. Scarcity thinking is also deeply emotional. People who live with constant financial pressure experience fear every time they look at their bank account. Over time, this fear becomes part of their identity. They begin making every decision through the lens of lack, even when opportunities are right in front of them. Scarcity whispers, you don't have enough. You can't do this. You might lose everything. You should stay where you are. You're not ready. Maybe later. And later becomes years. Years become decades. And decades become regret. Meanwhile, those with an abundance mindset, people who think like the wealthy, are driven by a different fear. The fear of staying the same. The fear of looking back and realizing they never tried. The fear of wasting potential. The fear of regret. The wealthy understand that avoiding risk is the biggest risk of all. They know that every opportunity requires stepping into the unknown. They know failure is a lesson, not a death sentence. They know improvement comes through attempts, not excuses. They know progress requires investment of time, money, effort, and courage. The poor say, what if I lose? The rich say, what if I win? The poor say, I don't want to waste money. The rich say, I don't want to waste years. The poor say, it's too risky. The rich say, staying here is riskier. Scarcity thinking also leads to self-sabotage. When someone believes resources are limited, they hesitate, delay, procrastinate, and talk themselves out of opportunities. They convince themselves the time is not right. They convince themselves they don't know enough. They convince themselves they should wait for more money. But waiting never creates change. Waiting only creates regret. Scarcity is not about finances, it is about mindset. Two people can earn the same income, yet one builds wealth while the other remains stuck. The difference is how they see the world. The scarcity-minded person sees obstacles. The abundance-minded person sees possibilities. The scarcity-minded person sees fear. The abundance-minded person sees strategy. The scarcity-minded person sees loss. The abundance-minded person sees growth. Scarcity thinking can quietly pass from parent to child, from community to community, from generation to generation. People don't just inherit financial poverty, they inherit psychological poverty. They inherit the belief that life is something to survive, not something to build. They inherit fear disguised as caution. They inherit small thinking disguised as responsibility. And until this mindset is questioned, examined, and replaced, the cycle continues. Scarcity must be confronted with awareness. It must be challenged with intentionality. It must be replaced with a new belief that opportunities multiply when you develop the courage to pursue them. That mistakes are not fatal. That risk is a requirement for growth. That investment is the path to freedom. A person breaks scarcity thinking the moment they choose to step forward despite fear. The moment they invest in growth. The moment they build skills. The moment they stop seeking survival and start seeking advancement. The moment they stop asking, what if it fails, and start asking, what if it works? Scarcity thinking shrinks life. Abundance thinking expands it. Scarcity thinking keeps generations stuck. Abundance thinking breaks generational cycles. Scarcity thinking builds excuses. Abundance thinking builds wealth. You cannot rise with a mind trained to fear opportunity. You cannot grow with a mind trained to protect comfort. You cannot build wealth with a mind trained to expect loss. Wealth begins in the mind long before it appears in the bank. To break the poverty cycle, scarcity must die. Now that you understand how mindset traps people in fear, we move into the next form of poverty, one that keeps people unprepared, underdeveloped, and unqualified for opportunities that could transform their lives. If you're ready, we continue with Chapter 9, Skill Poverty, Why Many Never Grow Beyond What They Know. Chapter 9, Skill Poverty, Why Many Never Grow Beyond What They Know. Full chapter completion. One of the most silent and devastating forms of poverty is skill poverty, the lack of growth in ability, knowledge, and competence. It does not make noise. It does not scream. It does not announce itself. But it quietly destroys potential every single day. Skill poverty is invisible because it hides inside routines. It hides inside jobs people have outgrown. It hides inside habits that no longer serve them. It hides inside the belief that good enough is acceptable. Skill poverty keeps people trapped in the same financial bracket for years because income always follows ability. The world does not pay for time. It pays for skill. It pays for value. It pays for expertise. And when skills stop growing, income stops growing. Most people never realize that their financial ceiling is not caused by the economy, or by competition, or by luck. It is caused by the skill level they stopped at years ago. You cannot rise financially if your skills remain the same. You cannot earn more while learning nothing new. You cannot build wealth with abilities that never evolve. Most people live on autopilot. They wake up, go to work, repeat the same tasks, and call it experience. But doing something for 10 years does not create 10 years of growth. It creates 1 year repeated 10 times. True experience requires improvement. True growth requires challenge. True progress requires sharpening your mind instead of letting it rust through routine. Skill poverty grows when people become too comfortable with what they already know. Comfort is the enemy of advancement. Comfort whispers, "This is enough." Comfort stops you from learning. Comfort keeps you where you are. People who remain in the same place for years eventually convince themselves they cannot rise any higher. They believe the world is unfair. They believe opportunity is limited. They believe growth is for other people. But the truth is simpler. Most people are not lacking opportunity, they are lacking preparation for opportunity. Opportunity appears most to those who are ready for it. The wealthy understand this. They treat skill building as a requirement, not a hobby. They invest in learning because they understand that every new skill increases their earning potential. They study money, business, strategy, communication, leadership, and systems. They never assume they know enough, because the moment you assume you know enough, you stop growing. The poor stay poor partly because they believe learning ends after school. They believe education is something for students, not adults. They believe skill building is optional, not essential. They believe life will improve without improving themselves. These beliefs create stagnation, and stagnation creates poverty that lasts for years. Skill poverty shows up in many forms. It shows up when someone stays in the same job with no advancement because they never developed the skills needed for the next level. It shows up when someone relies on one income source and never learns how to create another. It shows up when someone avoids learning technology, new tools, or modern skills that could multiply their earning power. It shows up when someone spends hours consuming entertainment but cannot invest 30 minutes into learning something new. The harsh truth is this: if you are not growing, you are falling behind. Not because others are better, but because the world is always moving. Those who adapt rise. Those who cling to old skills sink. Skill poverty also develops when people fear failure. They avoid learning new skills because they don't want to feel incompetent. They don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to struggle. But struggling is part of growth. Every skill begins with failure. Every expert was once a beginner. Every master was once confused. The difference is that they pushed through the discomfort while others avoided it. People remain stuck because they avoid the discomfort that growth requires. One of the greatest tragedies is seeing someone with enormous potential waste it because they never sharpened their gifts. Talent without skill is wasted potential. Desire without skill is wasted ambition. Hard work without skill is wasted energy. Skill is the bridge between who you are now and the income you want to earn. The wealthy rise because their skills become more valuable over time. They learn communication so they can persuade better. They learn leadership so they can guide teams. They learn financial literacy so they can multiply what they earn. They learn resilience so they can navigate challenges. They learn strategy so they can build wealth intentionally. Skill compounds just like money does. The more you learn, the more you earn. The more you grow, the more life expands. The more you sharpen, the higher you rise. Skill poverty keeps people stuck because they underestimate how quickly skills can transform their lives. One new skill can double your income. One new ability can open doors that were previously locked. One new competency can shift you from survival to growth. The moment someone decides to learn deliberately, their entire financial trajectory begins to change. Learning something new gives confidence. Confidence leads to action. Action leads to opportunity. Opportunity leads to income. And income leads to a better quality of life. This is why the wealthy value learning. It upgrades their mind, which upgrades their future. Skill poverty ends the moment you take responsibility for your growth. The moment you stop waiting for someone to teach you and start teaching yourself. The moment you stop avoiding challenges and begin seeking them. The moment you stop protecting your comfort and start protecting your future instead. Your skills determine your earning power. Your earning power determines your opportunities. Your opportunities determine your future. If you want to break generational patterns, you must break skill poverty. If you want to build a different life, you must build different abilities. If you want to rise, you must learn. Not sometimes. Not occasionally. Consistently. Every minute you invest in learning pays you back in ways you cannot imagine. Every book you read sharpens your perspective. Every course you take expands your confidence. Every skill you acquire makes you more valuable. Every strategy you learn strengthens your financial freedom. Skill poverty is real, but it is also one of the easiest forms of poverty to escape. It does not require luck. It does not require inheritance. It does not require privilege. It requires intention. It requires discipline. It requires humility to be a beginner again. You break skill poverty by becoming a student of life. By choosing growth over comfort. By choosing development over distraction. By choosing preparation over excuses. Opportunities belong to the prepared. Wealth belongs to the skilled. Freedom belongs to the disciplined. Now that you understand skill poverty, we move deeper into another hidden barrier that quietly destroys potential: the lack of information. If you're ready, we continue with Chapter 10, Information Poverty. Why not knowing the rules keeps people stuck? There is a kind of poverty that hides in silence. A poverty that does not show up in your clothes, your home, or your job. It shows up in the decisions you make, the opportunities you miss, and the doors you never walk through because you never knew they existed. This is information poverty, the lack of understanding that keeps people trapped even when they are working hard, trying their best, and doing everything they know how to do. Information poverty is one of the most powerful and destructive traps. Not because people are incapable of learning, but because they do not even know what they do not know. They are fighting blind in a world where the rules are constantly shifting, and the people who win are the ones who understand those rules deeply. Most people are taught to survive, not to advance. They are taught to follow instructions, not create strategies. They are taught to work for money, not to make money work for them. They enter adulthood with almost no knowledge of finance, investing, negotiation, growth, real estate, business structure, or how wealth actually moves. They are told to get a job, pay their bills, avoid debt, and hope everything works out. But hope is not a financial strategy, and ignorance is not protection. Information poverty keeps people spinning in circles. They work hard, but their hard work does not translate into progress because the tools they are using are outdated. They save money, but they do not know how to grow it. They pay off debt, but they do not understand how to prevent it from coming back. They want freedom, but they do not know the pathway to reach it. Desire is present, effort is present, but knowledge is missing. And in the world of money, missing knowledge is expensive. The wealthy are not always smarter. They are not always more talented. They simply know something others do not. They know how money moves. They know where to put it, how to protect it, how to multiply it, and how to shift from active effort to passive returns. They understand that information is the foundation of every financial decision they make. They never rely on luck or hope. They rely on understanding. People trapped in information poverty often misunderstand wealth because they only see the results, not the strategy behind the results. They see someone with a business, but they never learned about business systems, tax advantages, or asset leverage. They see someone earning rental income, but they never learned about equity, appreciation, or financing. They see someone investing, but they never learned about risk management, compound growth, or market cycles. They see someone create massive opportunities, but they never learned about networking, partnerships, or market timing. Without this information, wealth looks like magic. But it is not magic, it is mechanics. The lack of information becomes a generational cycle. Parents can only teach what they know. If they were never taught about money, their children will inherit the same blind spots. This is why poverty often repeats itself even in families full of intelligent, hardworking people. The limitation is not intelligence. The limitation is access to the right knowledge. Breaking information poverty starts with humility, the willingness to admit that you do not know everything, and that not knowing is not a weakness. It is a starting point. Many people resist learning because they feel embarrassed about what they don't know. But embarrassment is nothing compared to the cost of staying uninformed. Pride keeps people poor. Curiosity makes people free. To escape information poverty, you must become a student of life again. You must ask questions no one around you has the answers to. You must seek knowledge that your environment has never exposed you to. You must read books you were never assigned in school. You must listen to people who are living the life you want. You must learn the language of money, the structure of opportunity, and the habits of success. Because if you do not learn the rules, you will always be controlled by those who have mastered them. Knowledge creates options. Every new piece of information expands your choices. Without it, you only have one path, and it is usually the path of struggle. With it, you unlock new ways to earn, save, invest, and grow. You begin to see opportunities everywhere. You begin to understand how decisions ripple into the future. You begin to act with intention rather than guessing your way through life. Information is leverage. It allows you to get more out of the same effort. A person with information can turn $1 into 10. A person without it can work for 10 years and never see progress. This is why the wealthy are obsessed with learning. They know that one idea, one insight, one strategy can change everything. And information does something even more powerful. It destroys fear. Most financial fear comes from not understanding how things work. Fear of investing comes from not knowing how to evaluate risk. Fear of starting a business comes from not knowing how businesses operate. Fear of managing money comes from not knowing where it should go. Fear disappears when knowledge enters. Confidence replaces hesitation. Clarity replaces confusion. In a world overflowing with information, ignorance is no longer accidental. It is chosen. Everything a person needs to change their financial life exists in books, courses, videos, mentors, and conversations. The problem is rarely access. The problem is willingness. People do not rise because they want to. They rise because they learn how. Once a person commits to escaping information poverty, their life begins to shift. They start seeing patterns that were invisible before. They start understanding why some people rise and others stay stuck. They start making decisions based on strategy, not emotion. They begin to build wealth intentionally instead of accidentally. The greatest investment a person can ever make is not in stocks, real estate, or business. It is in knowledge. Knowledge is the seed from which every other form of wealth grows. And that seed must be planted by someone courageous enough to learn what others overlook. Information poverty ends the moment you decide to educate yourself. It ends the moment you refuse to repeat the same patterns. It ends the moment you decide that ignorance is too expensive. It ends when you choose growth over comfort, understanding over assumption, direction over confusion. Because the truth is simple. You cannot become what you do not understand. You cannot achieve what you do not know exists. You cannot build a life you have no roadmap for. Knowledge is the first key. And once you unlock it, there is no door you cannot open. Chapter 11. Decision Poverty. Why indecision destroys more futures than failure. There is a form of poverty that quietly kills potential long before money ever runs out. It is not financial poverty. It is not opportunity poverty. It is not even skill poverty. It is the poverty of indecision, the inability to choose, to commit, to move, to step forward with clarity. Decision poverty is one of the most powerful forces keeping people stuck. Because every decision a person refuses to make is a decision made for them. And life, by its nature, will always choose the path of least resistance, the path that leads nowhere. A person who cannot decide becomes a person who cannot progress. Indecision is more dangerous than making the wrong decision. A wrong decision can be corrected. A wrong decision can teach you something. A wrong decision can be redirected. But indecision has no lesson, no momentum, no direction. It keeps you frozen in the same place for months, sometimes years, sometimes decades. Most people are not held back by lack of ability. They are held back by hesitation. They want to move forward, but they fear choosing the wrong path. They want to invest, but they fear losing money. They want to start a business, but they fear failing. They want to change careers, but they fear judgment. They want to grow, but they fear leaving the familiar behind. This fear disguises itself as caution or waiting for the right moment. But indecision is never caution. It is fear pretending to be logic. The truth is simple. You learn by doing. You grow by choosing. You advance by committing. Indecision is a slow, silent drain on your life. It steals time first, then confidence, then opportunity, and finally your belief in yourself. The longer you hesitate, the harder it becomes to move. Eventually, you begin to convince yourself that movement is risky, that staying in the same place is safer. This is the biggest lie indecision tells, that staying still protects you. In reality, staying still guarantees loss. Because while you pause, life continues. Your bills continue. Your responsibilities continue. Your aging continues. Your competitors continue. And the world evolves without waiting for your hesitation to end. Decision poverty creates mental exhaustion. The more you hesitate, the more you overthink. The more you overthink, the more overwhelmed you feel. The overwhelm leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to stagnation. Stagnation leads to regret. Regret leads to self-doubt. And self-doubt leads right back into hesitation, a vicious loop that traps millions. The wealthy escape this trap because they understand one powerful truth. Clarity comes from action, not from thinking. You do not need to know every step. You only need to know the next step and act on it. The rich are decisive not because they are fearless, but because they know that decisions create movement. They know that movement creates feedback. They know that feedback creates wisdom, and wisdom creates better decisions. Even if they choose wrong, they learn faster than the person who never chooses at all. The difference between people who rise and people who remain stuck is not intelligence, not talent, not luck, but the speed at which they make and act on decisions. People trapped in decision poverty wait for the perfect moment. They tell themselves they will start when things calm down, when they feel ready, when they have more money, when they have more time. But there is no perfect moment. There is only now. Every opportunity you postpone becomes an opportunity given to someone else. The longer a decision is delayed, the heavier it becomes. A small choice turns into mental pressure. Pressure turns into fear. Fear turns into paralysis. And once paralysis sets in, even simple choices feel impossible. To escape decision poverty, you must first understand why indecision feels comfortable. Indecision protects you from responsibility. If you do not decide, you cannot fail. If you do not commit, you cannot be judged. If you do not start, you cannot lose. But this protection is an illusion. Avoiding failure guarantees failure. Avoiding judgment guarantees regret. Avoiding starting guarantees staying stuck. Every major transformation begins with a single decision, even a small one. You do not need to change everything today, but you must change something. One step forward is infinitely more powerful than thinking about taking 10. Decision strength is built like a muscle. The more decisions you make, the stronger you become. The stronger you become, the faster you move. The faster you move, the more results you create. And results build confidence, the very confidence people think they need to begin. You must break the cycle by acting before you feel ready. Readiness comes from experience, not from waiting. People who rise financially decide how much they save before they spend. They decide how much they invest before they hesitate. They decide which opportunities to pursue before fear talks them out of it. They decide on a plan, commit to it, and adjust only when data demands it, not when fear demands it. Every decision you avoid becomes a life you avoid living. To escape decision poverty, begin by simplifying your choices. Write down what you truly want. Identify the next step that moves you toward it. Not 5 steps, not 10, just 1. Then make the decision. Immediately. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Because the longer you stretch a decision, the weaker it becomes. Next, remove the illusion of perfection. No decision will ever feel perfect. No path will ever be completely safe. No future will ever be guaranteed. But the only guarantee offered in hesitation is stagnation. Finally, trust yourself. Most people do not decide because they do not trust their own judgment. But trust is built through action, not thought. When you follow through, you prove to yourself that you are capable. When you take responsibility, you prove to yourself that you are strong. When you commit, you prove to yourself that you are worthy of the life you want. Your future cannot begin until you decide. Your wealth cannot build until you decide. Your opportunities cannot appear until you decide. Every door you want to open stands locked behind a single key, a decision. Do not let indecision steal years of your life. Do not let hesitation become your identity. Do not let fear disguise itself as thoughtfulness. Decide boldly. Decide quickly. Decide with intention. Because your future depends on your ability to choose. The rich are not lucky, they are decisive. The poor are not incapable, they are hesitant. Your transformation begins the moment you decide it will. Chapter 13, Responsibility Poverty. How avoiding accountability destroys growth. There is a form of poverty more damaging than lack of money, more limiting than lack of resources, and more crippling than lack of opportunity. It is responsibility poverty, the deep-rooted habit of avoiding accountability for one's life, one's choices, and one's outcomes. Responsibility poverty is subtle. It is quiet. It is comfortable. And that is what makes it so dangerous. It allows people to remain exactly where they are while convincing themselves that nothing is their fault. It offers a false sense of safety by pointing blame outward instead of inward. It protects pride while destroying potential. It keeps a person from feeling guilty while robbing them of the power to change. Responsibility poverty sounds like this. This is just how life is. I can't catch a break. I wasn't given the same opportunities. It's not my fault things turned out this way. The system is against people like me. Someone else should have helped me. It's too late to change now. These statements feel comforting in the moment, but they become chains wrapped around a person's future. People who avoid responsibility believe they are protecting themselves from pain. In reality, they are surrendering control of their life. The moment you blame someone else for your circumstances, you hand them the power to keep your life exactly where it is. Responsibility is not about guilt. It is not about shame. It is not about beating yourself up for past mistakes. Responsibility is empowerment. It is the understanding that you are the only person who can change your life, and that this is good news. The wealthy, the successful, the resilient, they all share a single mindset. If my life is going to change, it must start with me. People who rise do not wait for someone to come save them. They do not wait for permission. They do not wait for perfect timing. They do not wait for conditions to improve. They move. They adjust. They adapt. They take ownership of their decisions, their habits, their results, and their weaknesses. They hold themselves accountable even when no one is watching. Meanwhile, responsibility poverty leaves people powerless. Instead of changing their habits, they complain. Instead of learning new skills, they blame. Instead of improving their situation, they explain why improvement is impossible. This mindset creates stagnation. Stagnation becomes frustration. Frustration becomes resentment. And resentment becomes a belief that life is unfair, even when the real obstacle is the person in the mirror. Blame is addictive because it removes discomfort. If your failures are someone else's fault, you never have to confront your own patterns. If your lack of progress is caused by circumstances, you never have to discipline yourself. But the price of that comfort is high. It costs you your future. The moment you stop blaming external forces, everything changes. Suddenly, you gain the freedom to build new habits, new systems, and new outcomes. You stop waiting for life to get easier and start becoming stronger. You stop hoping for change and start creating it. You stop living in reaction and begin living in intention. Responsibility is the foundation of every transformation. Without it, nothing sticks. No habit lasts. No lesson takes root. No progress sustains. Because if you believe your life is someone else's responsibility, you will always sabotage your own growth. Responsibility creates clarity. It forces you to look at your life honestly. It reveals the patterns you ignore, the excuses you repeat, the choices you avoid, and the behaviors that keep you stuck. It exposes the moments when you chose comfort over discipline. It shows you the days when you settled for less instead of pushing for more. This honesty can be uncomfortable, but it is also the beginning of freedom. People who escape responsibility poverty stop saying, "This is just who I am," and start saying, "This is who I choose to become." They stop saying, "This happened to me," and start saying, "This happened, but I control what happens next." They stop repeating the narrative of helplessness and begin writing the narrative of change. Responsibility builds confidence. When you take ownership of your decisions, you also take ownership of your progress. Every small win becomes a reminder that your effort matters. Every habit you stick to becomes proof that you can trust yourself. Every challenge you overcome becomes evidence that you are capable. The opposite is also true. When you avoid responsibility, your confidence collapses. You doubt your ability because you never give yourself a chance to succeed. You doubt your potential because you never challenge your limits. You doubt your future because you never take control of your present. One of the most damaging effects of responsibility poverty is that it attracts environments that reinforce it. When you blame others, you naturally surround yourself with people who do the same. You bond over your helplessness. You connect through complaining. You find comfort in talking about the world instead of changing your own world. And soon, your circle becomes a trap. A trap built out of excuses and emotional comfort. To escape responsibility poverty, you must change your language. Replace "I can't" with "I haven't learned how to yet." Replace "It's not my fault" with "I control what I do next." Replace "Someone should help me" with "I will help myself first." Replace "Life is unfair" with "Life is my responsibility." You must change your perspective. Choose to see mistakes as teachers, not punishments. Choose to see challenges as chances to grow, not reasons to quit. Choose to see effort as investment, not suffering. Choose to see yourself as the builder of your life, not a victim of your circumstances. Responsibility does not guarantee ease. It guarantees growth. And growth will change your life in ways comfort never could. The moment you embrace full responsibility, your habits improve, your finances improve, your decisions improve, your relationships improve, your identity improves. You shift from being carried by life to steering your life. The poor in mindset blame. The rich in mindset adjust. The poor in mindset complain. The rich in mindset correct. The poor in mindset wait. The rich in mindset act. Responsibility poverty ends the moment you say, "I am done outsourcing my life." It ends the moment you decide that the rest of your life will not look like the past. It ends the moment you stop explaining, stop excusing, and start executing. Because the truth is simple. No one is coming to save you, but you are fully capable of saving yourself. And once you accept that, your future finally begins. When you're ready, say, "Proceed with Chapter 14, and I will continue with the same depth, intensity, and long-form style." Chapter 14, Self-Image Poverty. Why you can't outgrow who you think you are. There is a kind of poverty that hides deeper than empty pockets and overdue bills. It is the poverty of self-image, the quiet, invisible belief that you are not worthy of more, not capable of more, not built for more. It is the poverty that whispers, "People like you don't succeed," even when you are working hard to change your life. It is the poverty that limits dreams before life ever does. It is the poverty that decides the ceiling long before effort begins. Self-image poverty is the prison built inside the mind. And until you break that prison, no amount of money, opportunity, or motivation can set you free. Most people are not held back by the world. They are held back by the person the world convinced them they are. They carry childhood messages, cultural expectations, painful mistakes, and old failures into their adult lives. These memories become identities. And identities become cages. A person can try to build wealth, pursue goals, and improve their life, but if deep inside they believe they are unworthy, undeserving, or incapable, they will sabotage their progress every time. Not consciously, but through hesitation, self-doubt, fear, procrastination, and shrinking back whenever success gets close. Your life will never rise beyond the identity you accept. Self-image is the foundation of everything. It determines what you chase, what you tolerate, what you expect, what you believe you deserve, and what you are willing to fight for. A poor self-image equals a poor life, no matter how much effort you apply. Because effort without belief collapses under pressure. Self-image poverty shows up in many ways. It shows up when someone apologizes for having dreams. It shows up when someone plays small so others feel comfortable. It shows up when someone rejects opportunities because they feel unqualified. It shows up when someone wins, but feels like they cheated their way there. It shows up when someone's talent grows, but their courage does not. It shows up most clearly when a person keeps returning to the life they are trying to escape. People think they lack discipline, but the truth is they lack identity. They want to succeed, but they still see themselves as the version of them who fails. They want to build wealth, but they still see themselves as someone who never had any. They want to break the cycle, but they still see themselves through the lens of their past. Your self-image is powerful because the mind always tries to stay consistent with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who struggles financially, your choices will align with struggle. If you see yourself as someone who cannot finish things, you will create patterns that reinforce that belief. If you see yourself as someone who always falls short, you will retreat the moment progress appears. The 1% understand this truth deeply. They know that success begins with identity, not income. Before they changed their finances, they changed their mindset. Before they changed their habits, they changed their self-image. Before they built wealth, they built belief. They began to see themselves as capable. They began to see themselves as worthy. They began to see themselves as leaders of their own lives. They began to see themselves as builders, not victims. They began to see themselves as the type of people who rise. Self-image poverty ends the moment you stop defining yourself by who you used to be and begin defining yourself by who you choose to become. To escape this poverty, you must confront the stories you tell yourself. Stories like, "This is just how I am. I've always struggled with this. No one in my family ever made it. I'm not special enough. I don't deserve success. I'm not confident enough. It's too late for me." These are not facts. These are scars pretending to be truths. Every belief that holds you back was planted somewhere, by someone, by an environment, by a past experience. But you are not obligated to keep living under those beliefs. You can challenge them. You can replace them. You can rewrite them. A belief is only powerful if you continue to feed it. To rebuild your self-image, you must start by seeing yourself as someone growing, not someone broken. Someone learning, not someone failing. Someone developing strength, not someone chasing worthiness. You must speak to yourself with respect, because the mind believes what it hears most often. If you constantly call yourself lazy, you will act lazy. If you call yourself weak, you will behave weak. If you call yourself inconsistent, you will become inconsistent. If you call yourself unworthy, you will always sabotage your blessings. But if you begin to say, "I am becoming disciplined. I am learning to succeed. I am capable of growing. I am worthy of a better life. I am building a new version of me," then your behavior will rise to support that new identity. The mind does not resist change. It resists inconsistency. Change becomes possible when identity and action match. When you see yourself as someone who respects their time, you start protecting it. When you see yourself as someone who saves money, you stop spending unconsciously. When you see yourself as someone who pursues growth, you say no to distractions. When you see yourself as someone who succeeds, you stop fearing failure. Your entire life moves differently when you believe differently. Self-image poverty also ends when you release the weight of your past. Your past was not a life sentence, it was a lesson. Your failures were not an identity, they were teachers. Your mistakes were not proof of who you are, they were proof that you were trying. You must stop punishing yourself for versions of you that didn't know what you know now. Finally, you must surround yourself with people who see your potential, not your limitations. Your environment must reinforce your new identity, not drag you back into the old one. Growth is easier when you stop walking among people who benefit from your smallness. Your self-image determines the life you build. To change your life, you must first change what you believe about yourself. Because no matter how big your goals are, you cannot outgrow an identity built on doubt. The rich in mindset build identity first. The poor in mindset build excuses first. The rich say, I can become this. The poor say, I'm not the type. The rich say, let me learn. The poor say, this isn't for me. Your life changes the moment you declare who you really are, not who your past says you are, not who others say you are, but who you decide to be moving forward. Self-image is destiny. And when you upgrade your identity, you upgrade every corner of your life. Chapter 15, Destiny Poverty. How daily choices shape the life you end up living. There is a final form of poverty, deeper than the lack of money, deeper than the lack of opportunity, and deeper than the lack of resources. It is destiny poverty, the slow erosion of a person's potential through daily choices that pull them away from the future they could have built. Destiny poverty does not strike suddenly. It creeps in through small decisions. Choices so small they feel harmless. A skipped habit. A delayed goal. A missed opportunity. A moment of procrastination. A night of comfort over progress. A year of repeating the same patterns because change feels uncomfortable. These choices do not destroy a life overnight, but they shape a life over time. Every person wakes up each day standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward growth, discipline, intention, opportunity, and elevation. The other leads toward comfort, distraction, stagnation, and eventual regret. Your destiny is not shaped by the big moments people imagine. It is shaped by the small choices you make every single day. Destiny poverty begins when someone believes their future is fixed. When they believe their life is already decided. When they believe they have gone as far as they can go. When they believe that the version of themselves they are today is the version they must be forever. But nothing could be further from the truth. Your future is built, not assigned. Your destiny is shaped, not predetermined. Your life is written by your decisions, not by fate. The poor in mindset wait for destiny. The rich in mindset build destiny. Every successful person you admire had a moment when their life was no different from yours. They too were unsure. They too had doubts. They too struggled with fear, inconsistency, and uncertainty. The difference is that they made the hard choice. The choice to grow, to act, to move, to rise, even when the alternative was easier. Destiny poverty thrives on avoidance. Avoiding growth. Avoiding discipline. Avoiding taking responsibility. Avoiding discomfort. Avoiding the truth. Avoidance is the enemy of destiny because you cannot build a future while running from the present. The richest people in mindset live with intention. They understand that every action is a vote for the person they are becoming. Every habit is a commitment to their future self. Every day is a new opportunity to either reinforce their dreams or weaken them. They do not wait for motivation. They do not wait for ideal conditions. They do not wait for someone to push them. They choose. And they choose with purpose. Destiny poverty ends when you stop treating your life like something that happens to you and start treating it like something you are responsible for creating. People trapped in destiny poverty underestimate the power of consistency. They believe change requires massive effort, huge leaps, or dramatic transformation. But destinies are built through steady progress, through daily improvements, through small, intentional steps repeated long enough to alter the course of a lifetime. Your destiny is not shaped by intensity. It is shaped by consistency. A single hour of learning each day becomes a transformed mind. A single disciplined routine becomes a new identity. A single financial habit becomes long-term security. A single courageous choice becomes a new path. A single year of intentional effort becomes a life unrecognizable from the one before. Destiny is built quietly, long before it becomes visible. People will not notice your transformation at first. And that is okay. The seeds you plant in private become the fruit you show in public. Your daily choices are investments, and destiny is the return. Destiny poverty also comes from letting external voices shape your internal direction. Many people never rise because they allow their dreams to be edited by the fears of others. They listen to the doubts of insecure people. They let the limitations of their environment shrink their ambition. They let the criticisms of small minds convince them that their dreams are too big. No one else should have the power to define what your life becomes. Your destiny belongs to you, not your past, not your family, not your environment, not your mistakes, not your critics. Destiny poverty ends when you reclaim authorship of your life story. You must be willing to walk a different path, even if it makes you stand out. You must be willing to rise above the expectations others have placed on you. You must be willing to reinvent yourself again and again until the version you become matches the vision you had. Destiny is not something you discover. It is something you build with intention, discipline, and courage. Your choices determine whether you move toward greatness or repeat a lifetime of mediocrity. Your habits determine whether you evolve or remain stagnant. Your mindset determines whether you create breakthroughs or continue cycles. Every day you are building a destiny, whether you realize it or not. The poor in mindset drift through life without direction. The rich in mindset steer their life with clarity. You are not stuck. You are not finished. You are not limited. You are simply one decision away from moving your life in a new direction. Destiny shifts the moment you choose to shift. Growth is a daily decision. Discipline is a daily decision. Focus is a daily decision. Elevation is a daily decision. And poverty, in all its forms, ends the moment you choose differently. The future version of you is waiting. Waiting for you to take yourself seriously. Waiting for you to break old patterns. Waiting for you to create new habits. Waiting for you to rise with intention. Waiting for you to show the world who you were always meant to be. Your destiny is not written yet. The next chapter is blank. And you hold the pen. Choose to write something powerful. Choose to write something disciplined. Choose to write something worthy of the life you want. Your destiny belongs to your decisions. Always remember that. And before you close this chapter, before you move on to your next steps, take a moment to invest in your own growth. If this audiobook has inspired you, empowered you, or opened your eyes to a new way of thinking, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs this message. And leave a comment telling us which chapter hit you the hardest. Your support helps this message reach more people and empowers this channel to continue creating life-changing content for you. Subscribe. Stay focused. And keep chasing greatness. You've just completed a journey that most people will never take. You've looked deeper into yourself. You've questioned the patterns that shaped your life. You've examined the habits, beliefs, and limitations that have held you back for years. And now you stand at a crossroads. The same crossroads every successful person once stood at. The same moment where they had to choose between who they were and who they were meant to become. Remember this. You are not defined by your past. You are not trapped by your circumstances. You are not locked into the life you were born into. You are powerful. You are capable. You are responsible for your evolution, and that means you are responsible for your greatness. Everything you heard in this audiobook is simply a guide, a blueprint, a light to help you build the strongest version of yourself. But the transformation happens in your daily actions, your daily choices, your daily habits. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need perfect motivation. You simply need to start. And then start again tomorrow. And again the day after that. Because greatness is not built in a single moment. Greatness is built in repeated moments. It is shaped by intention. It is strengthened by discipline. It is proven by consistency. If this audiobook opened your mind, lifted your spirit, or shifted the way you think, then make sure you subscribe to Audiobook Sounds, Chasing Greatness. Your support allows this channel to keep creating powerful content that elevates your mindset and fuels your journey. So before you leave, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with someone who needs this message, and drop a comment telling us what chapter changed you the most. This is your moment, your new beginning, your fresh foundation. Go rewrite your life. Go build your destiny. And never forget, you're not chasing greatness, you're becoming it.